But we are here at the studio are still going to raise some issues that is still a concern. Especially, it's something that we need to give some focus on more on this special day, on Independence Day. Now joining us live at the studio, Rheza Maulana, wildlife conservationist.
Thank you so
Hello,
much.
Rheza. How are you?
Doing fine. Thank you for inviting me here.
Thank you for being here.
Yes. And we are going to talk about wildlife conservationists. It's still very, very rare.
Quite mouthful, isn't it?
In Indonesia, yeah.
It is, yes. Yeah, so my background is in environmental science. So I have a master's degree in environmental science. So environmental science is basically a field of study that incorporates different kinds of expertise into studying the environment. Because as we know it, the environment is very important for us. And you cannot just say, oh, this is the task of a biologist, or this is the task of a forester. You know, everybody has to help, even the common people.
Yeah. So it has to be hand in hand.
Of course.
Not only between the experts, but also
Yes, everybody.
the people, everybody live here to preserve.
Yes.
Right. And what are the main issues that you think Indonesia is facing?
Well, at the moment, one of the main issues is about wildlife exploitation. It has become quite prominent the last few years. At the start of 2020, we have the terrible pandemic, which until now, everybody, scientists from all over the world said that it has been as a result of the zoonosis. So it's basically diseases that carried out by wildlife. So wildlife trade, whether it's legal or illegal, has the higher risk of spreading new diseases, pandemics. But there's a study that says during that time where we should be stopping wildlife trade, the whole wildlife trade increases. We can see people gaining fame from social media by owning, I don't know, like monkeys, snakes, and whatnot. You know? So this is a bit of a misconception, which is we need to fix this. So that's one of the issue, and I can talk about a lot because it also deals with deforestation, biodiversity loss, and it also talks about a lot of social stuff.
So we definitely want to talk more about this.
Well, I think one of the most interesting is that I came from the background of architecture, but I have passionate for wildlife, so I studied environmental science, and I apply my architecture by helping designing the enclosure of leopards.
Okay.
So instead of using architecture skill for zoos or keeping these wild animals at home, what we do is we create these enclosures, these specialized enclosures to teach them how to climb trees again, how to hunt again, and then when they are healthy enough, when they are ready to be released, we can release them. And recently we just had a leopard release a couple of months ago, and it happens to be the same leopard that I taken care of at the rescue center in Cikananga, Sukabumi.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Can we go there sometimes?
Well, it's not open to
I would love to.
But yeah, you can, as a special
guest.
I'll let you know. I'll tell them you're my friends.
Do these efforts, do they happen? Is it once in a while thing? Because I'm sure even just to like you said, like having them in an enclosure and then releasing them, it must have taken some time. Like, is this an everyday thing, or do they only happen every couple of months?
Well, it is an ongoing project, so it's not something that only happens once in a while. So every year there's always a project, and because at the same time there's always problems, there's always issues. There's always wildlife being caught from the wild, being sold illegally. So there's always wildlife to be rescued and needing to be rehabilitated. So there will always be a monkey release, orangutan release, leopard release, and just a few weeks ago we have eagles release as well. So if I may, like, we can keep doing this, or we could prevent this from happening by stopping the wildlife trade, so we don't have to keep rescuing this wildlife.
Yeah. So how does it work, like the rescue attempts?
Well, it's usually carried out by the government, the Ministry of Environment, and usually organizations also helps. So it's a very official project. and it requires a lot of effort and people and also facility. And yeah, that's why I think we really need to support those people, both the government and the non-government side. We have to support them. If we have enough money, we can donate to them, we can provide a better enclosure, or we could, like I said, become a volunteer ourselves, or at least share their post through social media to teach people on what we should be doing instead.
Okay.
Okay, and now we'll go back to this conversation. Going back to our conversation, now I would like to go back to Rheza and ask you more about, do you think that in terms of conservation efforts of wildlife, who are the most important actors for these conservation efforts? In particular in Indonesia, because we're talking about the Independence Day of Indonesia, is it the local people? Is it the government? Is it an interdependent effort between all these actors? Like, who do you think is quite pivotal in terms of conservation for wildlife?
Well, perhaps from the government side, because they are the ones who are regulating everything, so they have the final say. But I personally think everybody can have a role in preserving wildlife and the whole nature, because it's not just one person's job, it's everybody's job. Even people who are just, maybe they're not academics, they're not from the government, but they do have the power using their social media on what to support. So if they're supporting the wrong messages, if they're supporting wildlife exploitation, for example, then they are tarnishing the efforts done by the government and everybody else. But if they can support the right ones, if they support the government's effort, they're supporting the right conservation, not exploitation, by helping wildlife continue to preserve in nature. So, our forests can also preserve the way we are trying to achieve our net zero. I think they are doing a lot of great work just by their fingertips.
Yeah, and there are also so many petitions on the internet that you can also sign up for that.
Of course.
And it's for free, and by doing that, it's also you already take action.
Yes.
So do you think you mentioned like everyone can do it? It always starts small.
Yeah.
So how is it like the public can take part other than what you just said? Like it's more specifically to go to preserve the conservation. You also mentioned about being the donor. But how is the step?
Okay, so I think when we try to make a change, the first person we have to change is ourselves. So, I learned from my experience. I don't go around just telling people what to do. I tell myself what to do. So the first step I do is I find the right sources, the right teachers. If we want to learn about conservation, about animals, we look at people who actually work in these fields. We don't go around finding an influencer, for example, or a YouTuber, for example, unless perhaps they are the face or the ambassador for the government or the ambassador for an organization that rescues orangutan, for example. So find the right sources and then learn what we should be doing. If we know that our trajectory forward is towards net zero by preserving the nature, absorbing carbon, and towards that goal. So we would do everything that goes to that achievement of that goal, instead of something that, for example, buying wildlife. If you buy wildlife, then this wildlife needs to be captured from the wild, right? And then we don't know what trees being cut down and whatnot. It's not helping the environment. So the first thing is educating yourself and then trying to do from the littlest thing you can do, even if it's just by not watching certain contents that exploit wildlife. There's a lot of contents, people owning wildlife at home. They're not experts. They're not. I mean, I don't want to belittle anyone, but there's always experts. And just by not watching, by not liking, don't share it, don't follow them. We are minimizing the trend, because all this wildlife trade happens in the last 2-3 years, happened just by someone posting online. So only through the word of mouth you can create all this chaos. So I think we can do the reverse by the word of mouth. We can tell people what to do. Hey, we should not be doing that. We should support this organization. Maybe you can find on Instagram from the government's pages or NGO pages, support them and do whatever you can, even if it's just sharing the news and not supporting the exploitation.
Okay, wait, I gotta cut you right there for a second. So you were saying that the trend has been increasing for the past few years.
Yes, there actually a study about that. So when it terms, for example, the ownership of infant primates, long-tail macaques and pigtail macaques, we've seen the trends from the keywords of baby monkeys on YouTube, Indonesian YouTube. It's very low. But since 2020 up to 2022, it rises up very high.
Wow.
And there's, so we can tell that this is a real life thing, and we can trace it back to specific kinds of influencers who make this kind of content, who become famous, and everybody else wants to copy. So the way I see it, if we can teach the right lesson, we tell them this is not conservation, this is wildlife trade. I'm not talking about whether it is allowed or it's not allowed, if it's endangered or not endangered. This is wildlife trade, this is not conservation. If you want to do conservation, we can direct you towards it. And if we can support those people, if we can make rehabilitating wildlife and releasing them trendy, then people will go towards that thing.
To hopefully Indonesia be free from this wildlife trade and abuse, and then focus more towards wildlife conservation.
Well, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but from recent years, Indonesia has been known worldwide. There are international reports that says not so good things about Indonesia. We've been known worldwide as the #1 producers of animal cruelty contents, the #1 country with people who doesn't believe in climate change, and so on and so forth. So my takeaway is that if we cannot fight to defend this country, the least thing we can do is to preserve its good name. It's very painful for me to think that our ancestors had to fight for this country only for our people destroying the name of this good country. So please, if you cannot do anything much, the least thing you can do is please protect our good names, and by learning that, maybe reading these reports, thinking what's going on, and don't put a blind eye on what's going on, and change happen from all of us. Do not be the person who tarnish our good name. Be the person who protect it, and become the person who is known that, okay, Indonesia is a country that preserves its nature. Indonesia is the country who protects its wildlife. Let's do that together.
Yeah, true. Because we know that Indonesia is an agricultural country, and we have a lot to conserve while we still can.
Yes.
Yeah, before it's too late. Yeah.
That's true. Well, some great closing remarks from both our wonderful guests on the show. I want to say thank you so much.